each one of us would like to be communicated in a certain way. And each one of us also, if we're communicated in a different way, we don't hear everything you're saying to us. It's a design of a human being, right?
Yeah. And
So
it's very hard to see that as well.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, when you're not being communicated to properly.
Tuesday on NBC, Jimmy Fallon and Bozoma St. John host the highly anticipated new competition show.
I hired 10 creatives from all walks of life. They will be battling it out to see who can impress the world's biggest brands.
This is a huge opportunity.
This is the battle for the next big idea.
This is not play.
We're spending millions of dollars.
I'm so excited to embark on this adventure with all of you.
May the best idea win!
On Brand with Jimmy Fallon. Series premiere Tuesday on NBC.
Wish you could become a morning person? You know the type, up before the sun, early morning runs, first one to the office with donuts and a smile. How do they do it? Easy. With the new Galaxy Watch 8, sleep tracking and personalized insights from Samsung Health help you improve so you can wake up to a whole new you. One who, dare I say it, skips the snooze? It's possible. Train your sleep with Galaxy Watch 8. Learn more at Samsung.com. Requires compatible Samsung Galaxy phone, Samsung Health app, and Samsung account.
What is going on, everybody? Ryan Leary, William Tincup here with the You Should Know podcast. Thank you all for listening and for watching today. We have a wonderful guest, Mason Farmani. Did I get that right?
Absolutely.
I got it right. All right. Mason Farmani, welcome into the call. We're going to have a good call today about bosses. So William, you and I have spoken about this a lot. Actually, we had a call. We had an episode we did a couple weeks back, maybe a month ago. And I kind of feel bad because I threw my bosses, my old bosses, under the table. And I don't think I've recovered from the trauma of making them feel bad.
The question was, do you ever remember a moment where your boss made you feel where you felt belonged? And so it was a tough question.
It was a tough
question. And you were like, I don't think I've ever felt belonged.
I felt, not even just at work. I just don't fucking belong. Yeah, it put me.
It was a tough question.
It was a question like I wanted to just answer the question, Mason, right? But I couldn't.
No.
I'm like, like it made me actually think.
He went through his jobs, like from high school, and he's going through his jobs. You can see that he's going through his jobs. He's like, no.
It made for a really crappy podcast because unless you're watching, you didn't hear a thing. Everyone just sat there in silence, and they're waiting for me. And I'm just like, I couldn't come up with an answer, and I felt awful, and I still think about that. But hey, look, there's good bosses, there's bad bosses. We're going to talk about how to deal with the bad boss. Is that what we're doing today? That's the
it's difficult
focus.
Yeah, difficult boss. And Mason's an expert. He consults with people on several things. He'll tell us a little bit more about his company, but he's this discussion around difficult bosses is tied to several other things.
Right.
It's not just that you have a difficult boss. We've all ran into difficult bosses, and we can define that in a lot of different ways because it can be subjective from person to person. But Mason, why don't you tell us a little bit about, because your company, your consulting company, you go into companies and basically help them not just with difficult bosses, but with other things.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me to be on your show.
Sure.
It's my pleasure to be here. So, when I went to school, I studied industrial psychology. And
very nice.
Yeah, so and this was years ago. Without dating myself, I can just say that, this was years ago. But it gave me a lens to look at things that in the corporate world and also in the personal world. And so for years and years, I owned companies, and I, both through acquisitions and organic growth, I made them thriving companies. And the last company that I owned and I sold was a global company with presence in Dubai and Paris and London and all of the US. Cool. So I always managed people, and I owned and I operated them because I wanted to be involved, and I interviewed every single person that worked for us, which was a daunting task. But I believed that you can hire one person that does not belong, and it upsets the apple cart, right? So then a few years ago, I decided that I wanted to really make an influence at a different level. So I sold those companies. And what I do now is I do corporate and personal coaching. So all the experiences that I've gained over the years, and all the education, everything else that I did along the way contributes to what I do with my clients. So among the many things I do, one of them is I walk into organizations that have issues, that have they're either in transition, they're growing, or they're challenging. They have challenges. And one of them that is apropos to this conversation is when, especially at a high level, employees and founders or CEOs that are at odds with each other. And these people were hired at some point because there was a thought that they all got along and they all worked together and everything was going to be beautiful. At least there was a dream of it, right? Because we don't hire people thinking, oh my God, they're going to be so terrible, I'm going to hire them.
They're going to buck the culture and change. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So then what happens is along the way, something goes stray, something doesn't mesh anymore. So what I do is I come into these organizations, and one of the first things that these people notice is that their productivity of everybody's gone down because they're dealing with so many emotional traumas and problems. They don't get along, whatever it is. I'm saying A and they hear B, and then they go after B, and then we're not aligned, right? So the first issue usually is in productivity and efficiency. But then the most important one is that everybody's miserable, right?
Yeah.
They go home and they have that misery follow them to their personal life.
Oh yeah,
right.
And that's I've seen just through the years. Not only does that make for a really unhappy workplace, one, it affects your home life with your spouse, right? Like divorce and all that stuff. But coming back to work that next day or next week, or God forbid you take a vacation and you're complaining your whole vacation and you were just on a beach for 10 days and then you come back to work, you don't want to deal with the work stuff that has been happening and you disassociate more.
Yeah.
That's what I see. I've been in that situation where you just, I can remember, this is years ago at a staffing firm, went on the honeymoon. Like, I didn't like it when I was there. I went on my honeymoon. I came back. Said, all my boss said was one thing. I said, all right, I'm gone. Yeah. Like, that was it.
Yeah.
Set you off.
That was it. I didn't want to be there anymore. And I didn't even want to have a conversation. So, and that was just a staffing firm. At the executive level, that has a lot of repercussions of what could really happen. Yeah.
Totally. So, I mean, I think you said something really good at the beginning of our talks about, when was it the last time that you belonged?
I'm still trying to figure that out. I'm feeling judged by both of you now. So
no. It's a great conversation, right? Because difficult bosses, or bad bosses, if we want to call it like kids would, they have that in common. They don't make you feel like you belong, right? And feeling belong, one of the things that contributes to feeling like you belong to the organization is when your contributions and your opinions matter, right? If your boss brings you in and says, gosh, I'm thinking about starting this new division, and I want your opinion, right? And then really told you about it and intently listened, right? Not that I'm just going to make you feel good and I'm not going to listen to you no matter what, but they really listened and repeated what you're saying and then followed on some. It doesn't have to agree with everything you're saying, right? Then you're like, oh my God, I feel a little ownership here. I feel like my opinion matters. And as soon as you feel like you have a little bit of an ownership there, guess what? You belong. Right? You feel like I belong here and this is where my opinion matters.
Just radiates.
Now, right?
Yeah.
So and then you walk out of that meeting and you feel like you want to contribute even more. The best eventually comes from a certain amount of insecurity. Understand that.
Right.
Because we got to look actually make their employees more productive than anybody else. In them that they're acting like this, right?
Right.
So there's certain insecurities, and then I always say that in the work environment, it's really helpful to put our somatic lenses to figure out what traumas people go through during work and what trauma has gone through their lives to be this way. And even if you're working for someone, if you put on that lens to look at it and say empathetically, why is it that my boss is this way, right? And rather than just taking everything so personally that he doesn't like me, he doesn't have any good opinion of me, to just kind of like say, okay, so this is how he acts, this is how he likes to be treated, right? Rather than just kind of sticking with whatever it is that we want to always do. This is how my boss likes to be treated. And gosh, I wonder what has happened to him that he is like that. But not my job, but I will treat him the way he likes to be treated rather than the way I want to be treated. Right?
So I got to tell you this story, Mason, get your take. So,
hey, everybody. Got a quick question for you. Is your job easy, stress-free, and full of rainbows and sunshine every single day? Yeah, I'd say that's a big fat no. Hi, I'm David Noe, host of Speakeasy HR, presented by Payroll Partners, and proud to be part of the Work Defined community. Take a step down into my Speakeasy live on LinkedIn and YouTube, where we tackle HR and business challenges through raw, uncut, unfiltered conversations. This is HR like you've never heard it before. Bold, real, and full of practical takeaways. Real guests, bold insights, authentic conversations that drive change. Catch every episode on demand through your favorite podcast platform or all the content at speakeasyhr.com.
In high school, I thought I wanted to be an industrial psychologist. So
you would have done well there.
So I reached out to a network of folks, and I meet a guy in Dallas that works for Xerox, Team Xerox. And I scheduled a time. I'm like 17, 18 years old. And I just said, hey, listen, I'm thinking about this path. And I'd love to come and meet you and just kind of learn about your journey, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Drive to downtown Dallas. He's about 30 minutes late to the appointment, and he's wearing sweats. So when he shows up, I'm like in a suit, like I'm my Easter clothes, I'm ready. And so I said, okay, just tell me, like, what do you do? Like, what's the bit? And he goes, here's the thing, William, what you have to learn about what we do now, it's about understanding employees and getting them to productivity, max productivity, the faster the better. He goes, and this is the 80s, so I'll date myself. He goes, we have employees that have cocaine problems, that have alcohol problems, that have marriage problems, they have gambling problems, they have whatever the problem is. My job is to find out what that is, take them out of work, go play golf, go play handball, whatever, go do something and start to work with them to find out and unpack that to then get them back to productivity. That's the job. And I can have fun with them because we're not going to sit in an office, because then it looks like it's a box and people are going to clam up and it becomes different. I'm going to take them out and understand like what's going on in your life. And I fell in love with that concept, and I didn't do that, obviously. But when I was watching Billions, the TV show on HBO, they have an inside psychologist.
Yes.
And it brought me right back to the I can't remember his name with Team Xerox, but I'm like, that's what she does. She does. Now, she has an office, okay, so it's a little bit different context, but she's about unpacking that person and getting them to their max productivity, whatever that may be. Define that as you wish. So, begs the question, like when we deal with difficult bosses, and you've done an array of these with your consulting and in just your experiences in life, is it better internal or external to have someone, you know what I'm saying? Like, should
in-house position versus a consultant that comes in.
Right.
So each one has their own advantages and disadvantages, because I've done both, right? And I actually do both right now. There are companies that I'm that woman that has that office and figures out, and I usually deal with the CEOs and the C-level people where they come in and their issues get played out, right? And then I got to put them in their place so that they walk outside and they don't display that kind of a misbehavior to their employees. And they have to be strong to be able to do that, right? Because they're the people that are.
They got to want it. They got to want it.
Well, so my position is, if you've hired me, you want it.
Yeah.
Right. If you're writing a check,
if they're paying you to be there,
right.
Fair enough.
Well, check, you want
some people. Well, Ryan, some people, especially in the consulting world, they hire you
to say yes.
To
say yes. Yeah. So it's not just the hiring. I mean, yes, like I think that's definitely a litmus. You got to get past that. There's a consulting fee and you're going to spend money on this. Okay. But accepting the advice, like you're not getting the most out of your employees because you're domineering. Like, okay, let's unpack why you're domineering in a conference room with people. Like, why is that?
Yeah.
They've got to want that.
Yeah. So the way I confront that usually is I say to them, look, you know that I could say yes to you and win your heart and be great with you, right? And you're going to love me.
Extend the contract for another 2 years. Yes.
Yeah. And then I say, but it's not a good productive use of my resources and my time for you and your company. And you have an obligation to your company not to have me say yes to you. So
I love that.
And there's been times where I say, look, if you really want to just hear yeses, I'm not the right person for you. I'm here to just really tell you straight out the way it is. And if you don't appreciate it, then I'm just not the right person for you.
That tracks with me, because it's been years, but basically I would tell clients, prospects, before we got even to a client relationship, I'm going to tell you your baby's ugly. You're either going to accept that. I see my job as an external consultant as when your baby's not ugly, I'll of course say that as well, but I'm not going to play around and try to use 15 different words to say your baby's ugly.
It's ugly.
I'm just going to say your baby's ugly and well, okay, now what do we need to do to kind of go in a different direction, make it better? And again, probably I'd say half and half of the CEOs I interacted with when I was doing that, half of them were attracted to that. It's like, I need somebody in my life that would just cut through all the stuff. Yeah. And half of them were like, they didn't want that.
So there's an art in communication, right? We all know that. Right. And each one of us would like to be communicated in a certain way. And each one of us also, if we're communicated in a different way, we don't hear everything you're saying to us. It's a design of a human being, right?
Yeah. And it's very hard to see that as well. When you're not being communicated to properly.
Right. And you miss so much.
Mason, because you're an IO psychologist, do you think that's something to assess for? Because I'm thinking about the Berkman in particular. I took the Berkman 100 years ago, and it was with my firm. So everybody in the firm took it. Me and my business partner at the time, one of the things, because it broke everything down, like how you like it, how they like it, all that stuff. And one of the things that we learned about each other is I make decisions in seconds. Maybe not the right or wrong, but I process and make the decision. I've already moved on. And he was a really reflective, really empathetic, liked to do research, needed time to process, wanted time to process, not needed, and reflective, all of those things. So once we learned that, we read this in a report. We read this and we read it together. It's like, you know what? Here's what we're going to do. When I make a decision, when I come to a conclusion, I'm just going to tell you what it is. And then we'll wait 24 hours or 48 hours to talk about it. That'll give you enough time to do you. And I won't be stressed out because you're not going like I am, and you won't be stressed out because I'm forcing you to make a decision quickly. Our relationship from that point, it spiked because I understood how he liked his communication. He understood how I liked my communication too. So long-winded kind of a bit to understand your take on assessments and understanding kind of how people like things.
Yeah, totally. So
raise the rudder! Raise the sails! Raise the sails!
Captain, an unidentified ship is approaching. Over.
Roger. Wait, is that an enterprise sales solution?
Reach sales professionals, not professional sailors. With LinkedIn ads, you can target the right people by industry, job title, and more. Start converting your B2B audience today. Spend $250 on your first campaign and get a free $250 credit for the next one. Get started today at linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply.
Hey, it's Paris. You know I love sparkly things, right? Like stars. Duh. And thanks to Hilton and AutoCamp, I just slept under them. Picture me, serving looks by the fire outside my luxurious Airstream, making s'mores with the kids, while a national park is our backdrop. The great outdoors meets Hilton hospitality. That's hot. Explore all the new ways to stay at Hilton.com. Hilton for the stay.
There's a new, assessment test that a lot of people take. It's called DISC, D-I-S-C. You've probably heard that. That's valuable. And it's valuable for you to take it for you first, right? You got to know what are you made out of, right? What are your ingredients? Once you get to connect with who you really are, then what happens is that other people really become faster study, quicker study, right? I can look at somebody, and so one of the things I always recommend to my clients, I also do a lot of executive coaching, and I do also, is when I get into the environment, the first few minutes, I'm safe, right? I'm completely saying hello and all that, but I'm just really studying what's happening around me and who is doing what, how are they communicating. And during that first few minutes, I know from that point on how to communicate with each person, right?
Oh, wow.
And that's something that I think that our employees should learn. Our employers for sure got to learn, because productivity is really up to them. They're responsible, they're accountable for productivity. So they got to know how their employees would like to be communicated to. One person is a social person. Like I've had employees that are totally type A. I've also had employees that they like to be in a dark room. They like to just be left alone. They are socially not capable of interacting.
Right.
But I'm like, okay, well, this person is great at what they do. By all means, I'm not going to invite them to every social setting. I'm going to invite them, but I'm not going to force them to come into every social setting. Right. They're going to be uncomfortable, sweating the whole time. Why? So they look at me every time like, oh my God, thank you so much for not making me come there. It's like, yeah.
That anxiety level went down.
Yeah, anxiety goes down, and guess what? He feels belonged.
Right.
Ironically, right? For not belonging.
So Mason, how do you handle? This is so I'm fascinated by this conversation, and my mind's going everywhere. But how do you handle an executive, or what's the process, I should say, when an executive comes in and they don't believe in what you're talking about? For example, meditation.
Yes.
Right? Maybe I'm not a big believer in meditation. So when someone says, let's go to a meditation retreat, I'm like, you're a little weird.
I can't turn off my brain.
Yeah. So
that's the only reason I don't do meditation.
Meditation.
I can't stop. I literally would have to take a Quaalude or something like that, or 300 milligrams.
Conversation.
No. I'd have to self-medicate. If I wanted to actually meditate, I'd have to do 300 milligrams of edibles, and then I believe I would get to a state, or maybe some shrooms, where I could ketamine, where I could actually focus on meditation.
Wow.
Because I can't. That's my brain. I can't
wasn't
stop
thinking about any of that.
No, but I took, because my ego, I had to then think about myself. Like, I've been invited to meditation before. I've been invited to yoga camps and things like that, and I'm like,
All right. So how do you handle William, who doesn't believe in the power of meditation? I've never done it, but how do you? An executive comes in, they're mandated to come see you, and they're just like, they're looking at you and thinking you're a quack. Like, this isn't.
Yeah. So first of all,
how do you handle that? Because I can see that happening all the time.
So first of all, I would say,
and I'm not calling you a quack, but we'll put it in the title.
So first of all, I think meditation is useful in a lot of different cases and for a lot of people, right?
100%.
You can't say 100%. Not after all that.
For a lot of people. Not everybody.
For a lot of people.
That was the key word he was agreeing
to. He didn't say 100%.
Operative word.
He did not say 100%.
So I would ask that executive, what is it that you're trying to accomplish? Right? Are you trying to accomplish, I don't know, more productivity through
innovation?
People bonding with each other? Are you trying to get them to turn their noise off so they can be better at their work? Are you right? So you got to figure out what gap are we filling first, right? So I would ask them that first, and then I would say, look, you understand that exercise is really good for a lot of people, but not so good for a lot of other people. Find those activities that appeals to those other kinds of people that have the same outcome, but it's not sitting down and shutting the noise off, right? Maybe if you brought those people, for example, and gave them canvases and painting and something to paint on these canvases, would have the same effect. They're still disconnected from their mind, right? And they're actually now doing something creative in their mind, which we know once you turn that part of the brain on, the other analytical part of the brain gets less activity. So it's almost the same as meditation. Or bring them to the nature and see if they want to do, I don't know if they're really active people, see if they want to do jumping around or doing something, right?
Yeah.
So a good executive would be open to doing all of that. The problem is that he probably has benefited from meditation, and he thinks that everybody will. So
Right. But what's funny is, Mason, in both those instances with communication, and also in this, unlocking your brain to be more productive in whatever ways that is, both of those comes down to, as you've already said, understanding the person, understanding the audience, right? So know thy audience, and understanding your employees, understanding executives, understanding the board, and understanding what makes them tick, and then tailor making something that the outcome is what's important. How you get to the outcome, not as important.
You got to meet your audience where they are, right? It's like the same thing with public speaking, right? If you're a good public speaker, you'll spend the first few minutes trying to figure out where's everybody, what is the knowledge of everybody, right?
Yeah.
And it's just reading the room. You really.
Yeah, comics do this all the time.
Yeah,
they'll tell their first joke or two, and they'll be like, "Okay, so this is the
what
audience.
I got to deal
right,
with." Yeah. Now, in organizations, we have tools available to us. You can make people take tests. You know, I mean, I've always done that, right? It's like, you know, when you first hire people, by the way, you have the most leverage. Later on, making them take tests is a little more difficult than before you hire them, right? So you can do a lot of things as an employer and also as an employee right before you get hired. That's where both sides have the most leverage. So as an employer, you can have them take tests. You spend $100 up front, $150 up front, and a lot of good assessment tests that they're there. And you like look at things and you just figure out, my God, this is really not even a good fit for the organization. Why do I want to bring somebody like that here?
Right.
One of the things that's worth mentioning right now is, you know, cultures of organizations always gets trickled down from the top, right? So if you run into or if you go to an organization that's like 500 employees and you walk in and the receptionist is straightforward, a little on the rude side, I always say, God, you got to know that the CEO on top is pretty much similar to 100%. This person.
Is that way?
Because it's what's accepted. You are what you are. You know what you accept. And again, the top has set that forth on what's willing or what they're willing to accept and not accept. And culture, so many people don't understand culture in general, but they don't understand the hourglass of culture, that there's new inputs and then there's things that are going out of culture. That's all still directed by the top.
Yeah, and that's true. And people hire people that are like them. Right?
Oh, 100%.
So, I mean, you know, you walk 100%. Want to buy a car, you're going to gravitate towards the salesperson that are like you, right? So,
like
people always hire people like them, and then those people hire other people that are like them, right?
Right.
Homogenous environment at one point.
Yeah. So if you,
well, I'll tell you the upside of that.
Totally.
Of course, y'all will both hate this. But
probably
the upside of that is that everything's easier because they all go to the same country club. They all were in the same school. They're all in the same fraternity. They're all middle-aged white guys. There's no conflict.
It's easier until it's not. And then it hits the fan and then it just tanks. It just tanks. There's no safety net. I see how you build companies. I mean, no, I'm just
I'm not making a business case for it. Here's how I got there. I looked at a Silicon Valley VC firm. This is 10 years ago. And I went to the team partners, and it was all the same guy. They had, differences in their haircuts and eye color and some other things, but it was all the same guy. And immediately I got angry. And then a part of me then you know what? That's got to be very easy. Like that whole bit's got to be easy. They have to agree a lot.
But that's also the problem, right?
You know what I mean?
You're looking at the positive side, which is great. I appreciate that. But there's also a problem. It's the same hiring somebody who's a yes person, right? Where is the diversity in that? Where, and by diversity I mean thought diversity, right?
Right.
So where's the?
I think you have to have conflict to have innovation. There's got to be some level of, I agree with you, I hear you, but I think this, and then there's some type of resolution.
Brainstorm.
I think that's
not a brainstorm.
Yeah, it can lead.
That's a brain breeze.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, we should use that. I like that.
That's in the title. That's in the title. Oh, that's greatness.
It's the brain breeze with Mason.
Right, do you have a question? Because I have one.
I've got a lot of questions, but I'll let you go first.
Okay. So What's your take on hiring Mavericks? So, and I'm thinking of in our industry, there's a wonderful man named Jerry Crispin. And 100 years ago, he was hired at Johnson & Johnson. And his boss basically said, go break shit. I'll protect you. Go bounce around, find out what's not being done well. And it was all in recruiting. So it was all in talent acquisition and pre-hire and all that stuff. And he said, go break stuff. And he protected him. Like so he hired a Maverick. He knew he was a Maverick. It was a known quantity, knew what he was getting, but he protected him. And so is there, first of all, in your work, do you see people seek out Mavericks in that sense? And second part of that is there any relationship between a person that is a Maverick, and we can define that a little bit more, and a difficult boss? Like I have this bit, because you've got a PhD. I think, what college did you go to? Yeah. And IO psychology, Ryan, everything comes down to what school you went to and what professors were on your thesis.
I don't know if there's any value to that, but okay.
So, well, I've spoken.
Good, we're on the same page, Mason.
No, I've spoken PsyOp 3 times, and in every case, there's clusters of school. Like there's the University of Tulsa, there's UCLA. Like, yes, maybe not to the level I'm saying it. So is there any, it's like when I think of teachers, professors in particular, in my experience, there were professors that were great teachers, and there were professors that were great researchers. And I said all the time when I was in college, I always said, why don't you just split these two? Let the researchers go research. Let the teachers go teach. Why are we forcing one to do the other? So again, I think about those renegades or those Mavericks, and I think to myself, do you see in your work and in your experiences, do you see people seek those folks out? And if so, is there any relationship whatsoever between those folks and difficult bosses?
So I think, since we haven't put a lot of parameters around Mavericks, let me see if I understand that correctly. So you're talking about people that would come in and cause breakdowns so they can cause 100%. Breakthroughs. Right?
That's exactly right. I myself am one of those people in the sense of I don't believe in rules. I understand the rules. Right. I just don't believe it.
I have to say it depends on, well, you have to understand them in order to break them.
His response there was like, yeah, okay, we need a longer session here. Here's my hourly rate.
Yeah. I know all about you. Yeah.
We've got plenty.
I didn't think I was that obvious, but okay.
But breakthrough, you got to the place, you got to whether or not it's renegade or maverick, like the term
breakdown.
So it always comes down
I think that's right.
to the breakthrough, right? Yeah. So I would say that the organizations that are looking for that, they're either a chaotic organization, somebody who is always believing that we got to just continuously break down to breakthrough, or there's a organization that is actually dealing with challenges, right? They're like, we've been around, we've been stagnant, we're like, our organization is stagnant, and there's no such thing as a stagnant organization. If you're staying stagnant, you're going down, right? Water doesn't stay still. So either it's going to get rotten or it's going to change. So
every minute your finance team spends wrestling with data is a minute lost. Insight Software's AI-powered insights instantly move you from complexity to clarity. Automated analysis, real-time reporting, strategic recommendations, all at your fingertips. Transform how your finance team works and watch your business grow. Stop wasting time. Start making smarter decisions. Learn more at insightsoftware.com/AI.
So if it's the first one, then they really need help, right? If it's a chaos that is going to be, it's never going to survive.
How I've seen that play out, Mason, is they didn't say chaos, they said change. And so they were addicted to change. Like nothing could ever stand still because they were addicted to, okay, we need to innovate. We need to change. And they even said it like that. We need to change. We need to change this process with customers. We need to change this. And I came away from that believing that they were just addicted to change for change's sake. But I think your chaos word is a little bit better, more apropos.
Because once you mix those two, change and chaos, there's an issue, right? Because yes, change has been known to be good for human brain, right? If you keep doing the same thing, you're not growing brain cells, right? You're right. So if you're doing ceremonial stuff every single day, well, ceremonial stuff is good for calmness and regulation of the system. But then you need to have a certain amount of change in order for you to stay excited about life, right? So it's the same thing with work, right? Chaos is very different from change. Staying on top of the changes in your industry, for example, or what is a new way, what is a disruptive way to create better, to create more. It's again goes back to output, right? If you're doing it because you want to have more of an output, then you got to look back and say, well, so what changes helps? Not to just do it to do it.
Yeah. So how are you defining chaos in this way? So are you defining chaos? And when you say chaos, I'm thinking the fuckery of leadership. Like no one can make a decision. If they make a decision, they're arguing. It's very noticeable to the employee population.
So I took it, Ryan, that there's no North Star, that they have no either moral ethical code or moral code, but there's no true north. So similar to what you're saying, but it's like they've lost their way and they don't have a compass. That's what I think. To me,
so how do you mediate the two of us on this? Because
well, what is chaos? Hell, you're the expert. We're just saying when you said chaos, that's what I heard.
Yeah,
they don't have a compass, and Ryan heard something.
I don't want to. This is an interview, but I don't want to turn it into a therapy session. But let's do it, right?
No, go for it. Let's do it. Hey, look, this is free therapy. I'm all in.
So when
just don't send this an invoice.
Ryan, let's start with you. So when was the last time you were in a situation where you felt it was chaotic?
Probably very recently, like last year.
Give me the ingredients of what made it chaotic.
I think probably lack of decision making.
Okay.
Decision making and communication.
Yeah.
Trying not to.
So you got two of them right? I mean, and there's no wrong because that was yours, right? Those are the ingredients that you were experiencing.
Right.
So there's no right or wrong, right? So there is no decision making, and there is no communication. So there's either lack of communication or maybe even possibly poor communication, you would just say, where people are communicating, but they're not hitting it on the head, right? Which I say that the reality of the people that were involved were not aligned, right? They came from different realities.
That tracks.
I look at this and I call it a clock. You call it watch. And you can't see that it's the same thing, right? So the reality changes. When reality changes,
that tracks for me.
The communication suffers because we're not communicating anymore because we're just looking at it.
Sure.
And then when communication changes, the affinity changes, which means I don't really like you because you can't see my way. right? I mean, you look at any relationships, those three things, right, happen.
Same thing, yeah.
With your partners, with work, with every time the reality changes, what happens is the communication suffers and the affinity goes out. When the affinity goes out the door, now I have made up my mind that you don't like me and I don't like you. And then it's really fallen apart, right? Everything is falling apart.
Right.
One of the biggest scholars of our time has passed away. I don't know if you guys are familiar with him. Wayne Dyer said that when you change the way you look at things, what you look at changes. I'm going to say that again. When you change the way you look at things, what you look at changes. Right? So
that's the title of the show.
If you are able to actually look at this watch clock thing, and then as an expert, bring everybody in alignment, that they look at it and they say, wow, now I see. When you said watch, you meant clock. And when I said clock, you meant watch. Right? So.
Right.
We're saying the same thing. We're just using different words.
It's a timepiece.
And I teach this concept in political arenas. I teach it in family and emotional healing. You know, it's like, okay, so this happened to you, but this is how you looked at it as a 7-year-old. Now, as a 30-year-old, let's look at that same incident and see if we can replace, and that's where neuroplasticity and neuroscience comes, right? See if we can change the way we looked at it. The 4-year-old made a decision about the way he or she saw it, and that decision has been running the rest of your life. But let's, as a 30-year-old, look at it, see what you see today. And then the decision changes, and as the decision changes, there's neurons that are starting to fire together differently, and then when they fire together, they wire together. You do it long enough, there's a new network created, and when that new network's created, that becomes your behavior, right? So it's the same exact thing, right? The reality when it changes, and when you're able to look at it differently, then all of a sudden that issue becomes something different. And then you get in alignment. Sometimes you just need a good guide to bring you along, to have you see what it is that is, because the guide, as an observer, should really be able to see what the conflict is.
Well, in consulting, we used to say the term "the forest of the trees." So when you're in it, you're so close to the tree, you can't see the forest. So on outside, I mean, I was a horrible consultant, but when I was consulting, I would tell people about the forest, and by and large, it was like, yeah, we've talked about that before. Like they knew about it, but they just couldn't see it. Because they were too close to it. So I have one last question. I know Ryan does too. So you obviously believe that difficult managers can change. I struggle with that concept.
Yeah.
If they don't want to change, it's like all the other things that are in society. If they don't want to change, I don't think you can change them. It's like at 36, I realize giving people unsolicited advice is a waste of my time. At 36, I finally decided at 36.
Al did that.
No, I said. No.
Just be very, very clear with this one.
Fair enough. But I come to that realization, Ryan. And it took me a while.
By the way, you were giving away value. And nobody had value for what you were giving away.
Yeah. That's it.
So I think what you should do, blah, blah, blah. Okay. And I finally said, okay, I'm going to wait. When they ask me, hey, William, what do you think? Then I'm going to preface it. Okay, you sure you want to hear what comes next? and give them what I think, right? So I've learned that. And I've also learned, like, dealing with addiction, people that are addicts, that it's very similar. If they're not ready to stop drinking,
they're not going to stop.
Or whatever, it's a waste of time until they decide. Now, I'm thinking about that and thinking about difficult bosses or horrible bosses and thinking, if they don't want to change, if they've not gotten to the place where they want to change, what can we do?
Well, great question, right? Because I kind of insinuated this at the very beginning when you go to an organization and you see the receptionist act a certain way, right? Then you know that this organization actually nurtures this behavior, right? So you can have a difficult boss that seems difficult to you, but in that culture, they thrive, right? Because their boss is that way, right? And the expectation to, if there's a kind boss, and then you've got a tyrant running the organization, well, they're going to be at odds with each other, right? Well, he was probably not going to get hired to begin with, but right. So you got to know that that's the culture of this organization. And if you are a highly sensitive person, which is actually a personality type, you probably know, then you're going to be miserable in that organization, right? So you got to keep your eyes open at the very, very beginning of before you even start to interview. If that receptionist is kind and offers you water and tea and brings you in and, what else do you need? And you're like, wow, yeah, that's an organization that's a good fit for me. And if you're the kind of person that you yourself know that I'm a mean person and, blah, 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 then you're like, well, this is like, this is way too nice of an organization for me. I'm going to be like, ugh.
Right.
So,
Wall Street has a job for you. You're good.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
I think the challenge with that is oftentimes people looking for a job are desperate for a job.
Yeah.
And so if they get the interview and the call back and they go through
accept whatever.
They accept whatever comes through. But Mason, the final question, the final question that I wanted to ask this earlier, but I want to ask it now, and it kind of ties in. How many, just off the top of your head, approximate, of the executives that you work with in this way cannot come to a resolution, but they come to the understanding that this is not the organization for me or the position. I need to remove myself from this role. And is that a success for you at that point as well?
Look, I think that the ultimate goal of us as a human being when we come to this earth is to have joy. I think that's the ultimate, right? And if your work is taking that away from you and there's nothing you need to be accountable for, right? And I emphasize on that, right? Because there's some hard situations that are there for us to heal something and grow. That's our accountability, right? If you have used up your opportunity, and by the way, same with marriage, right? I'm one of the few coaches that when I work with couples, I say, this is not working, you guys, I'm going to help you get separated. And my colleagues are like, you are terrible. You should not coach anymore. So, like, okay.
Wait, you're paying to help us. I am. Trust there's no help for you. You're good.
I have the divorce agreement right here.
You get the house, you get the car.
You worked it out. Based on your personality, I know what you want.
So
we got
the same thing with work, right? And once you know that your accountability is not at play here, right? And it's just the wrong place. And I've had a lot of people that I worked through this with. And then what I do is I actually work with them on how to transition out. Because just like how you do the romance thing to get a job, there's certain ingredients that you have to have in place in order to get out of a job. And you don't want to burn your bridges. You want to make sure that you've done the right thing. If there is some mistreatment that needs reporting, that's got to be done correctly and done. And then also you got to play your cards right. You got to go to the market. You got to do your interviews. You got to have something in the background before you start rocking the boat here. And then
but it's ultimately to help them find that
and then
place
you got to
of joy.
know what you learned.
So
right?
it's in their
Same
best
relationships. When you get out of a relationship, and job is a relationship, right? You got to know what lessons you learned from this job. And then you got to figure out what it is that you want in your professional life. Where is it that your most contribution is going to be playing out? And once you figure that out, then whether you call it manifestation, whether you call it clarity, whatever it is you want to call it, then you can actually start looking for jobs that you want. But more importantly, as you go to interviews, like, that's not the one I want. It doesn't matter. It may take me 2 more weeks to interview, but yes.
You know what this reminds me of, Mason, is why the number of second marriages had a higher divorce rate.
Yeah.
Because they bring the baggage from the first marriage into the second marriage.
Yeah.
Brother, we could talk to you all.
Yeah.
No, we haven't healed.
Yeah.
We could talk to you forever. Thank you so much for carving out time for us in the audience and schooling us on a bunch of different things. So I know Ryan and I are really going to enjoy this because you just got us to think.